Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Live Ones. It is Saturday, October 30th, 2021, and look at this sidebar. Look at this over here. It is such a huge freaking day of sports. I cannot even believe it. I can't even remember a day where I've had action on this many games. Folks, we got 11 NBA games, 10 NHL games, Game 4 of the World Series, UFC 267, and 53 college football games to cap today. I got up at 6 in the morning for this, and I still think it'll be a minor miracle if I get this all published and everything like that before the noon kickoffs. Today is going to be epic. Headlines this morning: in an ugly, rainy Game 3, the Braves took a 2-1 series lead. The Astros didn't get a hit until the 8th inning in a stunningly anemic performance. Man, that game was low scoring and not in the tense, edge of your seat kind of way. It was ugly and it was boring. Hopefully things pick back up tonight. The Astros send old reliable Zach Greinke on the mound to save their season, try to extend the series back to Houston. If they go down 3-1 tonight, I think it's just an impossible hole for them to try to climb out of with how inconsistent their offense has been. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's dead. They were unreliable against Boston. Now they're unreliable here in the World Series against Atlanta. Just no consistency, and I think I'll be laying off this game again tonight. More fallout from the Blackhawks sexual assault scandal as Joel Quenneville is out as the Florida Panthers head coach. And really, there was no question about that. The man was in the room with the Blackhawks front office back in 2010 when the decision was made to keep things quiet about that until after the Stanley Cup Finals were over. If he didn't actively agree to the plan, he certainly gave his tacit consent to the plan. He didn't do anything to stop it. And the second person that got assaulted by their video coach is it's on him, and just like it's on everybody in the front office. So it's just horrible and unfortunate all around. I really hope this generation coming up that grew up in the age of the internet, of there being just a digital footprint of everything they've ever done and said, understands the simple notion that just trying to cover up a misdeed almost always is worse than the actual misdeed itself. That's where you get yourself into major trouble. Tons to get to today. Like we said, huge day of college football. Let's get right to it with probably one of the lowest totals I've ever seen in a while with Iowa and Wisconsin. The stage is set for classic Big Ten defensive slugfest. The total is right. It opened up at 37. It stands now at 36. Which, like I said, maybe one of the lowest college football over-unders I can ever remember seeing. That infamous Virginia Tech-Wake Forest game in 2014, the one that ended in 0-0 in regulation, that was a 38 total at the game opening. Bettors knew both of those offenses were terrible, but holy crap. This year, Iowa has allowed 15 points per game this season and just 2.7 yards per carry. Wisconsin has been just as efficient on defense, allowing 18 points per contest with 1.9 yards per carry. These guys are both just absolutely dominant at the line. So what's the X factor? Turnovers. Iowa is incredible at generating them. We've seen it all season. Their defense leads the nation with 16 interceptions this season. Wisconsin, specifically quarterback Graham Mertz, generates them in spades. He's got 7 interceptions to just 2 touchdown passes this season. I honestly think he's just the best option they've got. It's the only reason that explains why he's still on the field at this point. Look, Iowa had a bad day against Purdue. Okay, let's just be real about that. But they are still in a completely different class than Wisconsin. The Badgers, this is just not their year. Not in the Big Ten West or any other division in any other conference. As mammoth as their defense is, as great as their front seven is, they just don't have a single weapon on offense to speak of. In last week's win over Purdue, Wisconsin ran 56 offensive plays. 8 of them were passes. That's the extent of the trust that Paul Chryst has in his quarterback, Graham Mertz, right now. You run the ball all day against the Hawkeyes defense, and eventually you're going to wind up eating it. Iowa wins this game outright today on the road, which means there's value on them as a road dog. Give me the Hawkeyes +3 in this spot. Like I said, they're just a class above Wisconsin. I know it's going to be a low-scoring game, but Iowa's going to win, and if Iowa's going to win, then there's absolute value on the +3 in this spot here. So then the next game I'm taking a look at is Pittsburgh and Miami. I'll tell you, folks, you've heard me say it for a long time. I've been high on this Pittsburgh Panthers program for as long as Pat Narduzzi has been running it. But man, they are really something special this year. Their defense is allowing less than 20 points per game and really creating nightmares for opposing teams behind the line of scrimmage. They create a ton of havoc. I know they've been playing a bunch of trash ACC defenses up until now, but watching their passing attack, watching Kenny Pickett absolutely slice and dice Clemson's secondary up last week was a thing of beauty. I know Clemson's got a lot of injury problems on offense. They have no quarterback, but their defense is still Clemson. They're still elite level, and Pickett made them look silly, and is, as far as I'm concerned, is now in the Heisman conversation at least. If Pittsburgh winds up running the tables on the rest of the way and winning the ACC title as a one-loss team, they're going to find themselves in the talk for a playoff spot depending on how everything else shakes out. They're that impressive. The Panthers have not only won their last 4 games by double-digit margins, but they've covered all 4 games. And they face one of the most disappointing teams in football this year in the Miami Hurricanes. Even without De'Aaron King, who I always thought was kind of a suspect starting quarterback anyway, more of a runner than a quarterback, the Canes were supposed to have a punishing defense and secondary that excelled at getting turnovers. Yes, Bubba Bolden, their veteran leader in the secondary, went down with a shoulder injury and is out for the season. But let's be real. This pass defense sucked before that. They're getting absolutely torched through the air for 305 yards against NC State, 268 yards by Virginia, 261 yards in their opener against Michigan State. It's just getting worse and worse as the year goes on. They're just giving up more and more yards through the air. They're giving up 30 points a game, and when you don't have a quarterback and your defense is doing that, you're going to lose most games and lose them big. And that's what I fully expect to happen today. I expect Kenny Pickett to have another great day at home. I expect Pitt's defense to absolutely dominate the line and prevent the Hurricanes from doing much of anything. And I expect Pittsburgh to make another statement win en route to the Coastal Championship in the ACC title game that they'll probably play against Wake Forest. So give me Pitt -9 here in this spot. So moving on to the 3:30 games. And the big game in the 3:30 slot is Florida and Georgia. Georgia's defensive unit is, I'm telling you, if you're just kind of like a casual fan of college football and you think it's all offense, watch a Georgia Bulldogs game this year. Watch this Georgia team today. Their defensive unit is among the best I've seen in college football the past decade. Just a rock-solid wall at every level, allowing only 3.4 yards per play and 5 yards per pass attempt. You just can't move the ball on them, or at least no one's found a way to yet. But their offense is also, well, underwhelming, to say the least. 117th in the country in terms of pace of play, 83rd in the country in yards per rush. They are slow, they are methodical, and they just beat you to an absolute pulp at the line. If they only score 21, 24 points, that's all they need. And they know it. All they got to do is get up by a touchdown or two, and then they just deep freeze it. They just protect that lead as much as they can. And if they're able to control the game, the pace is going to be really slow, which means a very low total. Now, what makes this game interesting from a betting standpoint and probably from a fan standpoint is that Florida's a bit of a different beast on offense, the likes of which Georgia hasn't seen yet. It averages 34 points a game and ranks first in the SEC in yards per play. The Gators' offense relies heavily on scrambling, misdirection, and deceptive runs. It's crazy the amount of movement before the snap, the amount of motion that takes place when you watch the Florida Gators' offense. Gave Alabama absolute fits all game. I still contend that if that Alabama game had gone 5 more minutes, the Gators would have won, and Alabama would be a 2-loss team. But Georgia's defense, they've had games against run-heavy teams before. They handled Kentucky. They handled Arkansas just fine. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I'd certainly throw a shade to Florida covering the 14.5 points. But the surer play is the under 51.5 points here. I think the Bulldogs' style of play just lends itself to any under, no matter how low it's set, really. They don't go for the style points. They get an early lead, and they protect the hell out of it. So yeah, give me the under 51.5 points here today. So then the other afternoon game that looks interesting to me is Wake Forest and Duke. And you always have to be wary about line movement in the wake of just an absolutely insane game like the one that the Demon Deacons had against Army last week, where they put up a 70 spot. Anytime you do that against a service academy, people are going to give you a lot of hype. With Wake Forest, I'm beginning to think some of that hype is warranted, even though at its core, there's nothing particularly fancy or special about the offense the Deacons run. They just execute what they do run really, really well. For all you professional wrestling fans out there, there's a concept you've probably heard of called the 5 moves of doom, wherein you don't have to have 100 moves in your playbook to be a successful performer. You just have to have a few that you do really, really well. And that's what Wake Forest does. They run a mesh point offense that's very basic. where quarterback Sam Hartman and running back Christian Beal-Smith just kind of stand there in the backfield while the pocket starts to develop, and they wait for the edge rushers on either side of the line to clearly either commit to one of them or the other. They're either tailing the running back. They're either tailing Christian Beal-Smith as the ball is being handed off to him. They're just kind of standing there letting the play develop, and the edge rushers either bite on him or they bite on the quarterback, and then Sam Hartman just decides from there, okay, it's going to be a handoff, or I'm going to run with it myself the other way, or I'm going to pass it. And they just do zone read, and they're so practiced at it. There's a lot of veteran guys on this team who've been running this offense for a couple of years now. They do it so well, and they do it so up-tempo that it just completely befuddles and exhausts opposing defenses. And the results speak for themselves. Duke is one of the worst teams in the Power 5, bar none. It's between them, Kansas, and Arizona, as far as I'm concerned. Duke's defense is atrocious, near the bottom of the country in every metric there is. There's not a single aspect of the game of football that they excel at. And their offense, well, they look halfway decent in the early going, but that's gone by the wayside. This is a team that put up a paltry 7 points against North Carolina and got shut out 48-0 to Virginia. Do I think they're going to get shut out today? No. Wake's defense is garbage as well. Duke's going to get some points today, but Wake is just going to steamroll these guys. It's entirely possible the Deacons just don't punt the ball today. That's how bad Duke's defense is. They're going to march up and down the field all day, probably win by at least 3 touchdowns. So it's going to be Wake Forest minus 15.5 points today. You have to do a little bit of line shopping. It's minus 16 in some places, minus 16.5 in a couple of other places. But depending on what book that you're using, I think all of those are good. I think Wake's going to win by 3 touchdowns at least today. But line shop for the best price, just in case anything happens in garbage time. All right, so then going into the evening games, and we're going to take a look at Kentucky and Mississippi State. The Wildcats' Cinderella season turned back into a pumpkin 2 weeks ago, obviously, against number 1 Georgia, and they've had 2 weeks to mull over the disappointment before they're going to face the other Bulldogs of the SEC. We saw Georgia exploit the fundamental flaw in Kentucky's otherwise good defense, in which they're good in the front seven, they're good in slot coverage, they're good in man deep, but they're vulnerable to explosive plays. And, explosive plays. We got Mike Leach and his world-famous air raid on tap for today at Mississippi State in Starkville. I have my thoughts about Leach and his offense. He's an amazing character. He gives a great press conference, some of the most memorable interviews that you'll ever see in your life. His players seem to love him, but you just can't have a one-dimensional feast or famine style like that. You'll excite the fans, sure. You'll win some games, probably more games than you lose. You'll beat up on the jabronis of football. You'll torch them deep. But you're never going to win any championships running an air raid offense. And Leach hasn't. In 21 years of coaching college football, he's been to 2 conference title games, and he's lost both. He's 8-8 in bowl games. You have to be more balanced. But that's just a general note. This is a game where the air raid should, on paper, work wonders. Georgia doesn't have anywhere close to a world beater offense, and Stetson Bennett carved them up like a roast. Big play after big play, 20-yard pass after 20-yard pass. Honestly, it was the yards after the catch on a lot of Stetson Bennett's throws that amazed me. It's like if you can just get any skill player, any receiver in space, or any running back in space against this Kentucky offense, they're just not very quick. They can't get over to you really quickly. The Bulldogs are favored today at home, despite Kentucky having the much better record for a reason. I'd take Mississippi State's team total today over 23.5 points. I don't know who's going to win this game today, but I do know that Leach runs an offense and has the talent to execute it to light up the scoreboard today. So that is my play for that game. So the last college football game that I'm looking at today is one of the nightcaps, Virginia and BYU. Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo is 4,630 feet above sea level. Charlottesville in Virginia is 600 feet up, and that's high for the East Coast. Almost every one of Virginia's opponents that they play in the ACC this year is on the East Coast, close to sea level. They are acclimated to sea level conditions. There is simply no underestimating what thin mountain air does to athletes who aren't used to it when they're running at full speed. Hell, if you're not from the Rocky Mountains and you've ever traveled there, that first night it messes with your ability to sleep. The air is so thin. Virginia has an explosive offense, one of the best in the ACC, but it's going to have problems maintaining its pace the whole game, especially with where its holes are on defense. The Cavaliers are 112th in the country against the run. They give up almost 200 yards rushing a game. BYU, as per usual, is very pass heavy, but it does have the talent up front to establish a running game if they have to. They just have a whole lot of success with the pass, and so they don't even bother with the run most of the time. But they have Tyler Algier. He's a explosive downhill runner. He's closing in on 1,000 yards for the season already. Again, completely forgotten because BYU just puts up so many passing yards. But he's good for a 5-yard clip every time he touches the ball. He's got 11 touchdowns to his credit already this year. I think BYU's best game plan is going to be to take advantage of the elements, try to control the clock as much as they can, and basically exhaust Virginia. And I think they can do it. So give me the Cavaliers team total under 31.5 today. I think the combination of BYU's talent plus the elevation messes with Virginia's ability to get in the good offensive rhythm and groove that they usually get to and sustain it throughout the whole game. They might get some points early, but man, that exhaustion is going to wear on them as the game goes on. So yeah, Virginia team total under 31.5. Whew, that's it for college football, and we are about halfway home because there are other things that we need to cover today, and one of them is UFC 267, and the fight that I'm looking at on this card. And there are not a whole lot of good value picks on this card. There are a whole lot of mismatches on this card. I'm not really wild about a lot of these fights, but I do like the bantamweight fight between Peter Yan and Corey Sandhagen. These are two of the best bantamweights in the world, but they were both marred by really controversial losses in their last fights. Interestingly enough, both of them were to the current bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. Yan is coming off of losing the title to him in a match that he was winning and looked like he was just about to finish, but got disqualified for ticky-tack illegal knee. There's talk that he really deserves a rematch for that one. Meanwhile, Sandhagen lost a shocker of a split decision to Sterling in July in a fight that almost everyone there, every sports writer, every fan watching, had scored for Sandhagen. You can bet Sterling is going to be watching this fight as the winner is bound to be in line for a rematch for the title. Yan is an amazing boxer with a very underrated 90% takedown defense. He loves to stand up. He loves to take his time, pick his shots with his opponents. He doesn't go for the big power punch. He just dissects you with the surgical precision shots and basically lets the damage that he does early kind of beat you late, kind of wear you down late. He can knock you out, but he has absolutely no problem winning on points. Corey Sandhagen, on the other hand, is a much more volume puncher, just likes to hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you without care towards punch placement. He just relies on great cardio to carry him through the 5-rounders. Again, about half of his pro fights have gone to decision. Both guys love to stand up and fight. Both men are incredibly durable boxers. I fully expect this fight to go the full 25. So give me the prop to go the distance. You can grab it right now on FanDuel at -125. So over to the NBA and a rematch of the playoffs, the Sixers and the Hawks. The Hawks eliminated the Sixers in a grueling playoff series where the totals were going under by 17, 20, 23 points sometimes. Both these teams play incredibly slow, deliberate paces. Atlanta is 23rd in the league in pace of play, and the Sixers are dead last. Both these teams rely really heavily on their defenses with their half-court offenses to win games. Joel Embiid is still nursing that MCL that he's just not giving the proper time to heal. With the exception of the Pistons game on Thursday night, you've seen the effects because his minutes and his production have both been really limited. He's had trouble breaking 20 points a game, like I said, with the exception of that Pistons game where he went off for 30. I fully expect a hard-fought, knockdown, drag-out slugfest that goes under the total here. The total is 217.5. I think that's a pretty sure thing. Give me the under there. Moving on to the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves have won 3 of their first 4 games, including a huge win against the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday. D'Angelo Russell scored 29 points and notched 6 assists. Karl Anthony Towns just couldn't miss the basket if he tried. He went for 25. He was incredibly accurate. Now the challenge for Minnesota is to avoid a letdown performance following that emotional win. The Nuggets are coming to town for a back-to-back after a dominant win at home against the Mavericks. I still have a lot of question marks about the Nuggets shooting. And a lot of them were not answered last night. The team is great in the paint. They hit almost half their field goals, but their three-point shooting is 21st in the league at 32%. And their free throw shooting is abysmal. It's close to dead last. These guys are leaving a lot of points on the table, and they haven't scored more than 110 in a single game so far this year. That's not good news for them because Minnesota's looked really strong on defense. Like I said, Karl Anthony Towns coming up with almost 3 blocks a game. He's a great two-way player. Anthony Edwards looking really, really good in his second year, turning into a rebound machine. I like the Timberwolves to get the dupe at home here. I think they build on the momentum from beating the Bucks and control the flow of the game like they've been doing so far this year. The spread is Minnesota -2. Give me that here in this spot. And then finally, off to the NHL and a game this afternoon between the Canadiens and the Kings. Man, these are two bad teams so far. The Kings inexplicably beat the visiting Vegas Golden Knights 6-2 in their season opener, and that was the last time they were any good at all. They've lost 6 in a row, 5 in regulation. Heading into their matchup with the Canadiens on Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, that losing streak has also claimed their two best defensemen, Drew Doughty and Sean Walker, to serious knee injuries. Both of those guys are going to be out for a while. Montreal lost 5 in a row to start the season, but they did manage to right the ship a little bit in their last 3. They've won 2 of them. I said this all throughout the playoffs last year. I say last year, it was just a couple of months ago. But Carey Price put this Montreal team on his back all the way through the postseason to the Stanley Cup Finals. They have very few offensive weapons to speak of. The Habs are ranked dead last in goals per game right now, coming in at just under 2. They're dead last in shots per game with 28 and dead last in power play percentage at just over 10%. Prior to the San Jose game that they just played, this team could not buy a goal. The Kings are just bad all around. They take on a ton of low chance shots. It's just fire the puck in there from any angle imaginable, just hoping and praying something will find the back of the net. They've scored more than 2 goals just once in their last 6 games. These are just two bad offenses. So give me the under 5.5 goals in this sad sack game today. That is my 10th and final play for the day. What a supersized Saturday we've got on tap for today. I can't wait to just sit back and enjoy it. I'm going to have like 4 or 5 monitors on at a time with some of these time slots. Everyone, have yourselves a great Saturday. Really, really just take the time to enjoy this. Bet safe, stay safe. Follow us on Twitter at Live One Sports. Check us out on Roku and Fire TV at the Live Ones. And I will see you tomorrow.